Good afternoon. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happened with Paul Kaltenbach and how that relates to the narrative support that's going into the domestic side, as well as things that may be interfering with the overseas Ukraine narrative. Paul Kaltenbach, you may remember him, you may not. It was a quick story about a kid who joined the Marine Corps, 20 years old, was pulled out near the end of basic training by the FBI and given a survey and then quizzed a little more. And they basically told him, cooperate with us, we'll give you $250,000, or you can get kicked out. And he said, up yours, kick me out. Sounds noble, but unfortunately there might have been some more to his story that he did not tell us. I'll get into that and talk a little bit more about his associations with Patriot Front and whether that whole thing is a glowie operation. And of course, the administration needs to support their domestic narrative about the number one threat to democracy, as Joe Biden has told us before. And then the inconvenient demonstration that happened in Florida recently, running counter to that narrative. And the history of feds finding things that don't exist per their marching orders. And of course, fostering the narrative is going to ramp up into the election season next year and where we can expect to head from that. Now, talking about Paul Kaltenbach, this is the blog post by Diana West. I don't know who she is, but she was pretty thorough here covering what the news was about it. And as I mentioned before, he was supposedly approached by the FBI, offered $250,000 to cooperate, and he decided not to. The news story itself is pulled down, and apparently they want him to either be a rat or get kicked out and work for them, or just be flat out kicked out. And he said, get effed. Well, the problem with this is they didn't approach him as just a recruit with nothing going on. He was involved in a police stop where the guy driving was arrested because he had something to do with the North Carolina power station that was shot, and also had some prior arrests. He had a felony warrant. They let Paul Kaltenbach go at the time, but Paul Kaltenbach apparently had some kind of association with Patriot Front that he's sort of denying. Like, they mentioned Patriot Front. Well, of course they did, because apparently he had some kind of affiliation with it. He was charged in something else, and as a result, he didn't tell the Marines about that when he joined. So consequently, he was eligible for a discharge under fraudulent enlistment. And why I say eligible for, just because you might have something in your record doesn't necessarily mean that you're automatically kicked out if they find out about it. It depends what it is. Now, if it's a felony or if it's an active warrant, then yeah, they're going to kick you out. But if he's in basic training, they find out he's got a misdemeanor, okay, it's up to the commander if they want to kick him out. The FBI knew about this. They approached him. They told the commanders and said, hey, look, we want to talk to this guy. If he doesn't cooperate, we'll let you know. And they probably told the kid, hey, we can't kick you out, but your commander can. What you going to do? And when he decided not to do that, the commander took a look and said, okay, this looks bad politically, and I don't really like this kid anyway. So he was discharged with an uncharacterized discharge for a fraudulent enlistment offense. And I say offense, but it's not really like he's going to face charges or anything. It's just one of those things that administratively, with a low-level offense like a misdemeanor, they have the option of keeping him. They decided not to. So he's gone. But what does this mean in terms of the FBI going after him in the first place? Why do they want him so badly? Well, Terrence Popp interviewed Paul, Private Kaltenbach, and before he interviewed him, he commented a little bit. I didn't know this about Terrence Popp, but he was apparently approached by the FBI himself to maybe be a rat or supply some rats.
Now, ever since we had the stunning and brave ice cream social incident in 20 and 2020.
He's talking about the BLM summer and the Antifa riots and all that.
22, somewhere between 80 million to 110 million people are thoroughly fed up with the horse shit that we all saw that transpired. Now,
Indeed.
That puts the guys in law enforcement at a huge disadvantage.
It does.
They are radically outnumbered. Okay? And like you heard with the Whitmore thing, like 12 or 15 individuals in that whole plot were all FBI informants.
That is true, and it was so bad the judge in that blue state threw it right out of court when it went to court. The whole thing was a Potemkin village, and this is probably what's going on now in some situations, but he continues.
Just so you know, I myself was approached by the FBI in 2020 because I was starting the preppers. I gave it an infantry name, and they came and questioned me about starting a army to overthrow the government. I literally said, please say that again slowly, because stupid doesn't stick on the first pass sometimes. And then I literally told him, like, listen, I'm just doing comedy. I'm talking about current events. But if I come across any crazy shit or somebody's going to do a mass casualty event like Oklahoma City, I am not going to remain quiet about this. Like,
All right. I am not surprised that he was approached. I don't think they approached him with the intent of starting an organization to overthrow the government. He might be paraphrasing a bit here. They probably approached him and said, hey, you got something going on here. We'd like to know if we can work with you to maybe find people that want to do that kind of thing. Or if you find anybody who fits such and such a description, let us know, or whatever it was. But the point is they're going after anybody who might even resemble a honeypot for their coveted, discontented young man or men who feel like they can do something to overthrow whatever. And that's really what went on, I think, with Kaltenbach and with Terrence Popp here, although he wisely picked it up. I'm a little surprised they tried to approach a guy who is this seasoned, who would know better, but they did. By contrast, the Patriot Front was started as an offshoot after the Charlottesville Tiki Torch Parade, where one young man, 18 years old, got disenchanted, wanted to start a nonviolent group that would still have the same ideals and go after, demonstrations and basically do their thing. Yeah, it all sounds good, except an 18-year-old doesn't really have this level of organization. So a lot of people think that Patriot Front is an FBI sting. And I think the way this has been characterized makes us think like anybody who thinks that thinks all the people involved are federal agents. And that does not have to be the case. You don't need actual agents in there doing this stuff. They can be informants and be just as useful to the narrative. They can be shepherded along like so many other groups have been. They do this for a living. They know what they're doing. And the level of organization here is just a little bit too much. I mean, I'm not the only one to notice here. Here's Joe Rogan commenting on Kim Iverson's show.
Uniformed white nationalist group marches on Lincoln Memorial. CNN's all in. They're like, we're all in on this. Come on, show us. Look at these guys. Look at these guys. Where's the fat people? How come they're all wearing the same clothes? Do that again. What the is this? Have you ever seen anything that looks more like feds? Tell me that doesn't look like feds. Right?
It's like the 101st Airborne.
Bro, look at this. These guys are all runners.
Now, he's right. They do look like feds, but it's a mistake to assume that he thinks, at least I don't think he thinks, that every one of them is a federal agent. The fact is, they're all young recruited men, but then the habits of the people running this op, they are so good at what they do, they got it confused with training actual agents, and they made them all look the same. They made them all behave a certain way. They're all the right demographic. It's a little too organized, a little too regimented. And historically in America, the extremist groups haven't really been all that organized and regimented. Maybe it's to some degree, but if there are so much as an organization of clan out there, you find out who they are. It's a fat guy in a trailer park. It's not. They don't look like this. There's not enough of them to mobilize. So they get the young, impressionable guys who go out there and participate. And by chance they go and they pick the same uniform as every other federal agent. The khaki pants and the blue top. FBI agents wear that every day. It's just maybe they didn't see their own dissonance. But anyway, a lot of people are suspect of it. And a white supremacist march in D.C. was pushed by a fake Twitter account. Okay, this is something else that was interesting. When they went to D.C., they used this fake Twitter account with this AI-generated face here. That's not a real person. Now, I'm sure there's some young guys who are smart enough to do that. But the info ops and the organization, again, this almost just seems a little bit too scripted, a little too careful, a little too professional. Their website, their materials, using this fake account to generate all kinds of interest, like pretending to just be a bystander who noticed it, and then it made the event a lot more noticed by the media. That's pretty slick. That's somebody who might be trained in a little bit of tradecraft. And of course, somebody from the left penetrated the group to expose their faces, which they can do because these guys probably are not, like I said, actual federal agents. Although somebody's got some aspect of training to be able to get these guys together and have them move around. These might be riot police techniques that somebody knows, that there's somebody directing them. Somebody paid for all those shields, leg guards. Even if they bought their own stuff, they were given instructions as to what type of thing to wear, how to look, uniformity. Maybe this guy in the background here has got a little bit of affiliation. Is he a Fed himself? Maybe not. Is he contacted? Is he handled? Is he an asset? Potentially. Do they know they're being handled? No, probably not. Most of these guys have no idea. They think they're doing the right thing. They think with this group that's nonviolent and to the right and whatever, they're going to stand up for America. But that's who they want. They want young and impressionable. Anyway, they are useful to the narrative. We need to remember, go by the Joe Biden, the biggest threat in America. We don't do Islamic extremism anymore. That's very 2004. We don't do that. Now it's domestic threats. It's white supremacy. So we got to make sure there is white supremacy. The trouble is the supply of white supremacy is greatly inferior to the demand by the political machine. And of course, you have things like this happen, like this spontaneous event up in Boston. I remember this last summer. All of a sudden, these guys show up, they march around for a bit, and they disappear. And oh my goodness, nobody saw it coming. No, I don't believe that. I think there's somebody in the police department who got a phone call, and they knew something like that would happen, and they were gone before Antifa could even react, and nothing happened. So this idea that this coordination in and out like that, and whenever some of them do get busted, the whole organization isn't taken down. They're not using RICO to go after these guys like they could. So what's this mean? Well, they're not the only ones. Now, these guys are more than likely not feds. A neo-Nazi group showed up and blew up the false narrative when they announced they support Biden. Yeah, that's inconvenient. There's actually video of this over on Rumble. They interviewed this guy.
Christopher, there's a presidential race going on right now. Are you going to vote in 2024? What do you think is going to happen with
My
all
vote
this?
is useless. I think Biden's better than Trump because he sends rockets to Ukraine.
In support of Ukraine, you mean?
Hell Ukraine, hell Azov.
All right, that guy in the background, by the way, this guy, they call him Boneface. He actually went to Ukraine and fought with Azov. And this is where it gets awkward, okay? So you've got this guy out here wearing the symbol and saying how much he supports Biden because he's sending missiles to Ukraine. Oh, but there aren't any of those people in Ukraine. No, that's ridiculous, right? Well, yeah, that's a problem. Anyway, like I mentioned, Kent Boneface McClellan, 33 years old, of Deltona, Florida. There he is. Okay, convicted felon. He's on Twitter. He's out there, and people try to say that he didn't go to Ukraine, but he's got the receipts, and they don't really have much of an answer for that. He went over there. They actually interviewed him. An interview popped up on YouTube. There's an article out there online, but also an interview. It says interesting things. It's not a really well-managed interview, but some of the observations he comes out with are worth listening to.
The information war. I mean, like, it's really crazy to see it on this side of the fence versus what I was seeing in Mariupol. Okay. When I had heard that I was being like somewhat celebrated as like as kind of like a Davy Crockett type of individual when I was over there, like I was like, oh my God, they are never letting me. Yeah, they're not letting me go home. I'm dying. You know, I mean, it's over with. Yeah, fuck, dude, here I am. I mean, don't get me wrong. I fully fucking expect one day in the future to be arrested for, things that happened in Ukraine. I do fully expect that, as do a lot of everybody else I was with.
Now, he's not talking about war crimes. He's likely talking about just being over there for who he is and what he represents. And in the interview that he had, I'm not sure about this one, I didn't listen to the whole thing yet, but the interview that he did a while back, he conceded that he doesn't really have a political side in this, and he thinks America actually helped induce this, but he went over there obviously because he identifies with their symbols and beliefs and whatever the heck else. It's a little weird. He has nothing to do with the country, but just saw commonality with his views. And this is kind of awkward because, these people aren't supposed to exist over there, and these people are the good people. Well, the ADL had to come out and say, no, these are the good versions, Yeah, see, ADL defending those people. I don't know how this can be even possible, but this is Israeli 365 News, and this is not the only place it's been written where ADL tries to do some mental gymnastics around defending these people like Boneface going over there doing what they're doing. So if we're trying to say that white supremacy is a problem at home, and yet people like Boneface are going over participating in something that we're funneling money into, that's just weird. And, I know we need people here. Oh, wait a sec. Even the Times of Israel is saying that the ADL's report on extremism is a fraud. This is back in 2019, and there's details in there where they went out and basically just tried to manufacture all these stories which involved a template that they wanted to fit. And if it's bad enough where the Times of Israel is calling it out, it's probably not very accurate, but you can look this up yourself. And of course, it's been busted by Revolver Magazine and the House Judiciary community. The like I said, the supply of white supremacy does not meet the demand by these people. And Jim Jordan wrote to Christopher Wray, basically excoriating him because the FBI defines a domestic violent extremist as an individual based on upbringing in the U.S. or its territories without direction or inspiration for a foreign terrorist group or foreign power. Now, under this definition, I guess Azov is not a domestic violent extremist, and we don't have to let the FBI worry about that. So when Boneface goes over and participates in something internationally, is he breaking laws or not? They arrested him and approached him when he came back. They were surprised how he got over them in the first place. You can see the interview for more details. But the point is, Boneface is inconvenient. Those demonstrators are inconvenient. This whole thing is inconvenient because on one hand, we're trying to tell America that the greatest threat is people like Boneface, but on the other hand, when people like Boneface go over and help us in this proxy war against Russia, well, it gets a little complicated. So where does Patriot Front fit into this? Patriot Front is similar in that it is an op, but it's not necessarily staffed by any necessarily actual feds, but they do have people out there who are probably turned. They have people who are handled, people who are managed. And if you're a young man and you think you're doing something to help the country by joining a group like that, I say run the other direction as fast as you can, because this is what you're becoming. Okay, just you are being used. And if you're supporting Ukraine and you think that you're not supporting people like Boneface, you are. There's no Ukraine without people like Boneface. And even if Boneface himself doesn't go over there, there's plenty of Ukrainian Bonefaces already over there doing it. The whole thing's a mess. The narrative is coming apart, but we still have a year until the election. And they are not going to take the foot off the gas in terms of white supremacy and extremism, because it's all they know. It's the only bogeyman they have. But at the same time, they needed a bogeyman domestically, and they need these convenient, useful idiots abroad. So I would watch this space. It's going to get very interesting. That's all I got for right now. Thanks for watching.